consultant comes on stage, they can never do that without a presentation. So I can maybe use, 2 or 3 slides to just set up the discussion that we're having right now. It's a very interesting topic, as was just highlighted, the rise of private credit complementing or competing with banks. And I think we have both sides of spectrum on the table right now for the panel. I want to just start with definitions. While we were doing this prep call as well, one of the questions was, let's align on definitions for private credit, right? Many times people have different views, and for ease, we just use, as BCG, we came up with a global white paper last year, which was also on a similar topic on private credit, feeling the pressure and seizing the opportunity for banks. And in this case, the areas that we said, this refers to lending by institutions outside of the traditional banking system, work directly with borrowers to negotiate terms, and originate privately held debt not traded in public markets. I think this is a fairly, I would say, illustrious group, so I don't need to get into details, but just for aligning the context. If I look at globally, this market is 2 trillion plus, and it's growing pretty strongly. I would actually, and it has multiple categories. I want to bring attention towards a couple of things on the right, which is what are some of the reasons globally this has been an important phenomenon. And of course, we'll hear from the panel on what's happening in India. So globally, one of the elements that we're seeing is, banks obviously are driven by regulation, and there is a lot of focus on, capital efficiency and so on. So banks are taking conscious calls to retreat from certain segments. So that is one aspect that's playing out. Second, I think even in the investors, there is, and the points 2 and 3 are related, which is that people are starting to, see the maturity of the asset class, and they do feel that there is a certain need in my portfolio for higher yield, and what are the instruments which can actually fill that particular void. So that's again something that we are starting to see. Having said that, again to lay the ground, this has been primarily a lot driven by America. So if I look at both North America and Europe, they do constitute almost 90% of the market globally. Asia is of course coming up, and I think people are also looking at more diversification. So while it's about 6% of the market, there is more and more focus that people are starting to bring towards Asia, and again we'll talk about India in particular. And in that light, what I thought is for this panel, we could cover on 4 key areas as we speak to the panelists. One, of course, just seeing the growth or factors which are driving the growth. Then we go into the very interesting heart of the topic, that does this complement banking, or in which areas it presents competition. And again, as I said, it's great to have both sides of the house on the panel. And then we finally start to debate a bit, where does the product market fit for private credit lie, both from the borrower side as well as investor side. And finally, looking ahead, how do we see the future outlook for private credit going forward? Because there are a lot of elements with respect to, will the regulation continue to be like this? Do we find that people see some risk build up? So what role will risk management play? And those are some of the things that we will debate as a group. So with that, let's maybe go to the panel, and I'll just switch here. I'll maybe start with you, Rahul, on the very first question, given, you've obviously been deep into the private credit space, and maybe if you can set the background, particularly in Indian context, what have been the factors which have led to the growth of private credit in India? I know you and I were discussing that last decade has been pretty big. So what are the kind of changes you've seen?
Thanks, Neetu. Thanks for setting the context. So, Indian private credit segment per se seen a good part of growth in the last decade or so. Before that, it was pretty much, very low, non-existent kind of a thing. And multiple factors that have driven this growth. If I had to break it down, the growth driven by factors which are augmenting on the deployment side. The foremost factor was, the institution of IBC code in 2016. That was a big enabler in the hands of the investors to secure their capital. That kind of gave the fillip. And after that, slew of things have happened. On the fundraise side, liability side, it kind of picked up in the backdrop of the couple of defaults which we saw in 2016, 17, 18, right? And the larger part of the segment which was catered by the mutual funds that segment on the liability side was around $15-20 billion back then. That's kind of put an end, and the shift of capital has happened from there to the private credit side. So some of these two things, the private credit has seen a good pickup. And in Indian context, it's like panned out very interestingly. It's like an inverted yield curve. It all started with 20-22% and it's kind of started to come down. Now there are private credit funds on 13-14% category side. So, beautifully panning out, catering all possible requirements. Neetu, I think it's picking up and it's delivering the way it is delivering because of the ability to provide a very flexible solution capital. Now we see private credit firms providing capital to meet last mile financing, to meet the equity requirement of the promoters. We can call it mezz financing, rescue financing, and a whole lot of stuff. So the way the players in the industry have been able to come up with bespoke solutions, that's helping them. And that's, in a way, feeding further more growth. If I were to just go by the ballpark numbers, last year, CY24, the deployment by private credit industry was around $12-13 billion. Effectively, it was a growth of around 15-16% over CY23, which is like, a decent growth for our industry, which is still in a nascent phase. And I believe it's going to further pick up from here.
Fantastic. I'm going to pick up on one element that you spoke about, which is the inverted yield curve and how, things have evolved. So almost you were working or playing in a different segment, but obviously you're getting closer and closer to, I guess, where Rajiv and Paritosh are. So Rajiv, I'm going to bring that question to you. Is that to what extent are you actually seeing this private credit as, complementing, traditional banks and NBFCs, and where do you see it potentially, let's say, as competing?
Actually, I was looking at your definition, Neetu, which you had placed there. And you had mentioned that private credit refers to credit being given away from traditional banking. Actually, both Paritosh and me are regulated entities. So we will not do things which are beyond traditional banking because whatever we do, whatever credit we extend, it is, we have to justify why we are doing it. If there is a moratorium, we have to justify the moratorium. We can't have interest not being paid for long duration and so on and so forth. So to that, in that context, while private credit funds could play in a lot of the segments which you mentioned, I think we are there only in very few of them. Could be lending, which is obviously the largest one. There could be special situations, and special situations minded does not mean distressed situations, but those are special situations, or it could be mezz. So we don't play in the other segments. One is because we are a regulated entity and we have to follow all norms, and two, maybe as Tata Capital, we are a little more risk averse. So we don't see ourselves even operating in that 14% segment. For us, it's better to get a lower rate but be safe with our money. I think the reason why I would see things are growing is because one, I think we are now as an economy very comfortable with mergers and acquisitions compared to what it was maybe 20 years back. Courtesy IBC and other things also, Indian promoters today are far more comfortable in acquiring newer companies, assimilating them and making value out of them. I think that is one reason you are clearly seeing that happening. We are also seeing because, as families become larger and wealth needs to go down from one generation to the other, you need special structures for those transactions to happen. While this was happening through a different way in the past, today there are formal ways through which all of this is happening, and that's leading to situations like this. There could also be situations where, for example, traditionally a bank would step in, but the bank may take another 6 to 9 months to consummate those transactions, and that is when probably there's an opportunity for an NBFC to come in. So I completely agree that the opportunity is large, and I don't agree. We don't agree to the fact that we are competing with banks. I don't think so. We can compete with banks, but it's more of the stage at which an NBFC enters and a stage at which the bank enters. If there is a time gap between the two, that's where one steps before the other.
Fantastic. No, that's very helpful. And I think also, as you said, as Tata Capital, we have a certain positioning, so obviously, which is a bit different. Where do you see, and again, Kotak is obviously, again, one of the highly respected names on the street, but again, are there certain areas, Paritosh, where you see there is, maybe not today, but, certain areas where you feel in the future there's likely to be competition, or do you believe it's a good, a relationship where you find that you have both your own niches in some ways?
Let me just step back a bit and see this entire private credit industry started, I would say, early 2000, and initially most of the transactions were happening on around real estate, where real estate used to be as a large part of security, and along with that there is a financing solution required. And the financing solution required because as banks we can only, as Rajiv mentioned, we can give money to some people for certain end use, for certain tenure, interest has to be on a monthly basis. Now there are corporates or there are situations which may not fit into these parameters. For example, there may be a borrower which has a very prominent asset as a security. There is an event which is happening where the money will come in and the asset will get monetized. However, he needs a leverage, but he has no way to pay interest in the interim. So from a credit perspective, this may be a doable transaction and acceptable credit risk, but it cannot fit into the banking system. Maybe as you move, banks are the most regulated. NBFCs are a notch less regulated. For example, there is no requirement for a monthly interest collection by NBFC, but they also have equally strong monitoring mechanisms. So, and as you go from banks, NBFCs, capital market, and then alternate assets. Now, capital markets do more highly rated transactions, but when it comes to a situation or a solution-driven financing, which is also flexible in nature, that's where private credit has come in. Now, that's more from a borrower perspective. Now, if you look at from a lender's perspective, there is enough and more money chasing returns in the market, and everything cannot be put into equity market. When from a asset allocator's perspective, whether it is a private advisor or someone, some money is going into equity, some money has to go to in fixed income. But fixed income with the current interest tax rate in India, post-tax returns are so small that no family office or a wealth firm would advise you to put money into a 7-8% return asset. So that's why there is a need to look at assets which are performing credit, and then which is maybe a 12 to 14% return. That's where the birth of performing credit funds have happened. And then you get into highly, relatively higher risk asset classes, which is your special situation, or beyond that is distress. Now, all of them is a balance between someone who may not be able to raise equity from the market because that's not suitable size, or that's not a suitable time in the life of the corporate where equity will give him money. But there is a risk that can be taken through security which is available. Hence, there is a need for a private credit. Now coming to, so that's where I would say that that's how market has evolved. Complementary or competition, I think it's a very debatable issue, and from which vantage point you're looking at. As banks, we are complementing everyone, because whether you do a loan or a debenture, you need someone to do your transactions. So as banks, we are complementing every transaction. You have to have an escrow account with the bank. We'll monitor your flows. We will ensure that the money is distributed on time. So banks are always complementing, whether it is to funds or even to NBFCs. However, there are also situations where banks and NBFCs can work with the funds to ensure their returns can be enhanced. So there are companies, and every corporate needs some long-term financing, and also they need some working capital financing on a day-to-day. There is no point funding working capital through 18, 20% or a 16% return. As banks, we can't dream of getting 18%. As Rajiv said, 14 ke upar to risk बढ़ जाता है. So we are happy taking lower return, give us cash flows, give us transaction banking. We are happy with that. So it is complementary.
Just to add to what Paritosh said, and he put it very well, there would be no client to whom we would have lent who does not have multiple banking limits. So they are clearly, and just as he mentioned, there could be situations where, like for example, today a lot of promoters feel that they need equity, but at this multiple, they are not happy raising equity. And they may want to wait for some time to raise equity, but they may have very good assets and liquid assets. So borrowing against that also could be a form of structured lending which could exist.
Hello. Yeah. If I may to add up what Rajiv and Paritosh said, I mean, if I had to take a myopic view of what alternates do vis-a-vis what a bank does, let's pick up only the asset side. Asset side alternates, someone who's targeting, starting 14, 15, going up to 22. No sensible guy can ever dream of competing with a bank or NBFC, right? There's no leverage out there available. You're getting rupee, deploying a rupee. So you cut out your niche only where there is a need for a particular solution to be provided. So there's no competition whatsoever at all. I guess there is a good scope for all to coexist. And we have seen that in few of our transactions. And if anything, I would expect that to increase here from. And not only on the credit solutions, I mean, if I have to take example of my fund, we are a hybrid. We do credit, we do provide equity solutions also. And we had the first panel, we had all our investees to come, where we have provided equity solutions. But all these other places, we will look up to a bank or an NBFC to be providing a solution. So whether it's a credit solution or equity solution, clearly there is a reason for all of us to coexist. That's my take on it.
Fantastic. So do you end up, let's say, collaborating with Paritosh a lot as you think about, I'm sure that's the question on the minds of the audience. And actually there's a very interesting Odd Lots podcast which talks about this private credit as well, right? And one of the questions is asked, so who brings the deals to whom? Like, do you end up getting deals to Paritosh or other way around? How does it work?
Let Paritosh answer that one.
No, I think as banks, we have wider coverage of the market, wider coverage of the borrowers.
Right.
So we have probably visibility of more customers who want solution. And I must add on what I said earlier on complementary or competing. See, I think we are in an era where as banks, we are being squeezed out of the market because deposit costs are rising and the asset yields are falling. As bankers, all of us have started believing that there can never be default, and hence we are pricing risk badly. So in this situation, there is a need to rebalance the portfolio, and that is what is leading to bankers trying to be a little more innovative and trying to maybe add a bit of risk in their portfolio by trying their hands on some of the deals that Rahul should be doing. That's when, but that is too small a number, so it doesn't really increase. But I would say, I think on a big picture, there are many more transactions in the market, there are many more deals. I am a big propagator of a complementary format of business is always best for the investors, because when you go to a customer, there will be multiple banks, multiple intermediaries or advisors will be talking to them. Instead of competing among two sets of lenders, I think we should try and find a solution to the customer and stitch a deal together between bank and fund. Obviously, because banks have a lower risk appetite, they take early cash flow, security is available, fund has patient capital, it can take later cash flow, and obviously higher return. I think it's a win-win situation for everyone. And I believe that banks should be bringing deals to the fund, and fund
You
should
have
be
your answer,
respecting that.
Paritosh.
So, no, Paritosh is being modest, I should say, because see, I think all banks have access to a lot of customers, but you know, the ability to sense that there could be a deal through which you could make more, even if you collaborate with a credit fund or an NBFC, is extremely important. And Paritosh is a master in that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, again, in my own experience, right, many times you find even within the bank, people find hard to collaborate. There are 3 different divisions, and when you think about the corporate, sometimes, you know, you'll kind of look at different silos. So how do you ensure and create a win-win for the customer as well as for yourself? I think that seems quite interesting. I think we've covered quite a bit on the borrower side. I think many of you spoke about situations where, let's say, I don't want to dilute equity. I want a flexible structure. I may want something for a specific period of time, and those are the places where private credit comes in. Any other situations where you've seen private credit is a good product market fit, or, you know, where borrowers feel, and tenor again could be something which is relevant. Any other aspects where you feel from a borrower perspective we've not covered, which are useful for private credit?
If I may go for it first. So Neetu, actually several situations, several scenarios, okay. As Paritosh said or Rajiv said, you know, there are certain set of things which regulatorily a bank or an NBFC is allowed to do and they would want to do. Private credit or alternates, if I have to be drilled down, private credit to alternates, to that extent it's a little more flexible mandate, okay? That comes with the fact that on the liability side, you have a certainty that, you know, the money is not going to be withdrawn. If there's a commitment and you deploy it, it cannot be withdrawn over time. And it's a sensible, more evolved set of investors are the set of people who have committed capital. So you have that elbow room, you have that flexibility. So that has been stitched in a very, very beautiful manner by several alternates, and I can say for sure by us. I mean, there have been situations where, you know, the project was doing pretty good, but there were certain headwinds, like, you know, where the cash flows were not enough to meet the repayment obligations. I guess those situations we have stepped in alongside banks or NBFCs to give them adequate capital to term out their debt. Or we have not only provided that, you know, ability to term out the debt, but also given some bit of equity sliver to get the capital structure right. So if one starts wearing a thinking hat, you know, there are several ways, you know, alternate can provide solution. And obviously, when things are sorted, when things are right, where the plan is panned out as per the expectation, the eventual migration would be to a NBFC or a, you know, conventional bank.
So you do say that at some point the clients can graduate and you can give business back to Paritosh as well.
I'm more than happy for my client to migrate there, because that's,
right.
You know, you see the kid becoming a real grown-up.
Interesting. How about on the investor side? And you started to talk about this, Paritosh, which is to say, you know, if I look at any investor in the room and, you know, I look at my own portfolio, of course, people have, you know, exposure to equity, but we've all seen how that pans out. And frankly, that is what equity is. I think last few years were perhaps an aberration where you saw, you know, stable return in equity. I think that's frankly what equity pans out. So if people want stable returns and don't want to go for, let's say, you know, post-tax, you know, measly numbers, then this can be an element to look at performing credit. Are there any other reasons where you find that people also look at, investors find the right fit for private credit?
No, I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, globally this is a much larger industry, and it eventually goes to allocation of capital, how much you want to do equity, how much you want to debt, and within that you allocate some to higher yielding assets and some to relatively, so higher grade or higher yield. So that's how you cut it. It's a much larger market globally. India is yet growing, and within India also a large part of money is global money which is being invested in India. And this is mainly coming from funds which are sector agnostic, and very little money is dedicated only for India. India is today an expensive market, or I would say does not give the right return for the credit. Globally, and if you really look at its global money which is coming in, they would look at fully hedged return. In India, say US 10-year treasury is closer to 4.5, give or take a few basis points here and there, it's reasonably volatile. If on a fully hedged basis, if Indian sovereign is giving, say, at 6.5%, is not really covering the fully the hedge cost also. In US market, a special situation would give you 9% spread in dollar terms over the US Treasury. In India, none of the assets give that kind, because Indian borrowers are far more price sensitive on some of these. And that's the reason it's very little money is flowing into India, because India market is not giving the right return. The domestic investors in this market is still very, very small portion and growing. The sizes of domestic funds, which are again institutional institutional investors, not too many. It's primarily family offices which are putting in money, but that corpus is not really driving the volume in the market. It is still global money. Coming to the market, I think next couple of quarters would be, or couple of years would be very interesting if the equity markets remain subdued. People who have planned larger borrowings and are not able to go to capital market to raise equity, they will move to, some of them will move to special situation or a performing credit, and that's when deal volume could move up. I think the opportunity is, and it is effectively a risk matrix right from high grade to high yield. There are different funds which can come into different risk buckets depending on what is their mandate. I personally believe there is a much larger market. Traditionally, people have been going to various forms of private credit, which could be a money lender to anyone. This is, we are talking about institutionalized framework of that market. I personally believe there is a much larger opportunity, and a weaker capital market will actually be even a better opportunity for this segment.
Very interesting. And as you start to say, right, risk separation starts to happen, so different people know, and both on the supply side as well as demand side, right? Because you're saying as people start to figure out that not just equity, and if the market is substitute, maybe I can look at private credit. And then, as people start to see performance across cycles, I think they also start to become, investors start to become, to allocate more and more percentage of their own, capital for this asset class. I think we started to talk about future outlook, and that's where I wanted to bring you in, Rajiv. And, one of the things, obviously, again, sometimes the unsaid is to say, wherever we have regulated entities, there are very, very strong risk management frameworks in place. RBI has been very, very clear. With private credit, I think people always have that question that, how do you replicate that same level of robustness of risk management, etc.? What's your view, and how do you therefore see the future outlook for the asset class?
It's tough for me to answer that question. You may be better to answer those questions. But what I have seen is that in transactions like this, actually the covenants are even more stronger. Security is even more tighter, or the number of times you take asset cover is even higher, and that's because they are unable to get money currently from banks. So if you are unable to get it from banks or NBFCs, you are willing to tie yourself more on covenants or offering security. So, to that extent, I think when private credit extends money, they do take care to ensure that they don't end into a problem. But you may add.
So Rajiv, I agree. You know, if you have to look at the classic covenants, I mean, before I moved to alternates practice, for good 6-7 years, I was looking at something which was in like, you know, just about touching teens. And, you know, touching teen was supposed to be a great achievement to a deal, something of that sort. So if I were to see the covenants and stuff like that, they were not that tight, or your ability to enforce if shit hits the roof was much lower. Out here, you know, it tends to be far more tight because probably you are the only one. But it's also so because you don't have a visibility of cash flow immediately. So you are taking that futuristic call. You're taking a call that, you know, given your solution capital, things are going to be panning out and hopefully you're going to be taken off. But if that doesn't pan out, you have to be able to, you know, walk away with the security to realize for yourself. So that's, you know, one of the prime reasons you would see, okay? Neetu, you know, I guess if I get your question, you're saying that, you know, while things look as such, but what could the risk and what could be the potential to grow, if that's what the question was. To my mind, you know, risk, there is risk out here, certainly. Risk, known risk, unknown risk. Known risk is always good. Unknown is what concerns you the most, right? And then you're seeing this industry which is growing at a fast pace, you know, whatever, 15-20%, probably grow faster rate. That's when a person can commit a mistake, trying to go and chase that deal, try to outbid someone else and stuff like that. I guess that has to be resisted. Okay, that is the biggest risk to my mind. About solution set, I think there's immense. I mean, the previous panel which spoke about the potential for economy to grow and how manufacturing has to step up and play a role. And if capital markets are the way they are, I guess there's immense potential for hybrid private credit or hybrid solutions or whatever you call it, them to step in. And which is what we are seeing us doing. And it will find legs in all possible situations. So I guess there is good amount of you know, steam for it to grow.
See what Paritosh mentioned. Sorry, I'm getting to your point only. If it's a good bankable deal, there will be 10 banks fighting for it. Whether Paritosh goes down on pricing or not, but his competitors definitely will go down on pricing. The covenants will also weaken. The security cover will also drop. But the same thing may be different if the client is in one of those categories where private credit is flowing. So your ability to be much tighter on security or cover or pricing would be better. Obviously, there are risks, but
so long as it's the known risk and you know, kind of go in with your eyes open, that's a better. Paritosh, you were adding something.
No, I just want to add a couple of points. One, see, in a bank or an NBFC, there is capital which is available as a cushion for depositors. So before depositors lose money, bank shareholders lose equity. In a fund, it's a complete pass-through. So that's a different from a platform perspective. Second, I believe the funds which are investing into asset classes, they are taking, from a risk perspective, it is a risk evaluation. One could take an X risk, someone else could take a Y risk. Banks typically end up taking higher risk, but they deal with corporates which are high grade, AAA corporates or AA rated corporates. They will maybe do shorter term, though unsecured, trade finance, transaction services, etc. Funds would do more secured, tighter lending, and because they are not particular about whether the money has to come on 6 months and 27 days, it can come on maybe 29th day, and they won't really panic. So if you really look at that part, the funds really have a very, very secured lending, and that's the reason this industry is growing, and there is lot more money is chasing these kind of assets these days.
Fantastic. No, I think it was a great discussion, and I think where we started from, key factors, we talked about, if I want to just take a 1-minute summary, right? We talked about IBC, we talked about private equity, M&A growing and, kind of leading to the growth of the asset class. On the second one, as much as I did probe, I think all of us do feel that it's a very complementary situation, and I see, again, that's very good for the market as a whole, right? Even like if I look at a very different parallel on the consumer side, right? Nowadays, if I think about, I have a certain CIBIL, I'm a salary, I know where I need to go versus, so again, there is a clear market separation of who plays where, or at least a broad semblance of that. And I think that's very helpful. I think on the product market fit, we talked about how both for the borrowers in many situations, and especially given where the economy is, there are a lot of situations which arise where private credit can come in, and even from the investor standpoint, it can be a positive. And I think where we talked about future outlook, I think this part of known risk that yes, it has a different profile, but so long as the investors also are coming in with that view, I think that's the place where we land at. So I think very helpful. Maybe we have time for one question from the audience. There's one at the back, if someone can give the mic.
Hi. I just have one question on the disruption and a lot of news on this private credit ETFs in the global space. Because there's a lot of news on State Street backing this Apollo Global Management ETF, which is PRIV. So can we expect such ETFs in India? Is it a possibility? So that's my question.
So that's something that's going to be aspiration for us, is all I can say, right? I think India is far away from that. And yes, Apollo has taken that step. And we see more and more of alternates in US wanting to go that path. We recently heard Blackstone wanting to do that bit. But I guess India is far from that one. But I guess it's on track. When Neetu presented, the size of global private credit is $2.5 trillion. I guess India would just about be 2.5% of that. So, it's size of economy, but also the nascency of this industry. But I guess as we go up on the curve, we may see that bit, and that will be aspirational.
Fantastic. I guess thanks so much. Should we take one more? Okay, sure.
So I just want to ask the panelist, as we have talked about, global capital is an issue today because in their own country, because of the spread and the yield which they are getting, they are not interested in. And in India, the biggest challenge is we have very less risk capital because people are generally risk averse. And the country which is like an SME today, and the cost of fund is very, very high. So how we can create, or kind of an instrument we can create where it should be a win-win situation for borrower and lender? Because even today, the SMEs, which is like a backbone of India, is struggling for capital.
No, because I don't think so interest rates are going to go down significantly. I think most of the places in SME where we have found challenges is on shortage of capital. And I think today also there's fair amount of debt which is available. All banks, all NBFCs are fighting to give money to SMEs. I think where they hit a challenge is on capital. And that's the place I think the SIDBI and the government has been talking about creating a much larger fund to support SMEs. And I do understand that, a lot of that is going to happen. Um, so that is going to be the way. Or see, in India, even on the PE side, I think either we have funds which are on the absolute venture side and fighting head over heel to fund companies which make losses, or we have a set of funds who want to fund only those people who are making money, and good amount of money. So we don't have enough capital supporting SMEs in between. So that is a challenge. But I think either it has to be equity which needs to come in, and hoping that there are more sovereign type funds to support these sectors.
If I can just add, let's understand these funds are private capital which are looking for a certain return on a certain acceptable risk. They do not have a social purpose. So if whether it is SME or infra or renewable, whatever it be, unless the returns are available, the money will not come in. So I don't think they have a purpose that they want to support SMEs in India, and hence, so those funds are different. We are talking about pure return-driven private capital.